Hello and welcome to the final Trust-wide CPD session of this academic year on the topic of adaptive teaching, metacognition. Before we start the new learning, I'd like to revisit something we looked at during the previous session on the topic of scaffolding. As part of this session, I shared the FAME approach of fading, alternation, mistakes, and explanation. Which of these approaches have you trialled since? What worked well? What would you like to do more often? You have 5 minutes to discuss this with the person next to you. Pause here. As a reminder, through these sessions, we have been looking at the 5-a-day principle as a way of building adaptive teaching into every lesson, rather than treating adaptations as an add-on. A reminder that when we're speaking about adaptive teaching, we're speaking about adaptive teaching for all pupils. We know that high-quality teaching is the most important lever that schools have to improve outcomes for their pupils. The 5-a-day principle breaks down what that actually means. It means delivering explicit instruction, scaffolding appropriately, and teaching metacognitive strategies. Metacognition is our focus for today. This is the structure for today's session. We'll align our thinking on what metacognition is, and we will look at the 7-step model for metacognition and self-regulated learning. We'll then look at the skills of planning, monitoring, and evaluating in more detail before giving you time to plan your own lesson. Please make notes as we go through the session, as this may help you when it comes to applying these concepts in the final task. Our first activity today is a discussion task. Please talk to those on your table and ask one person to list your answers to the question, what do strong learners do when they get stuck? Consider what these pupils do during teacher instruction as well as through independent practice. You have 10 minutes. Pause here. Before we look at those lists, I'll give a definition of metacognition. Metacognition is the learner's ability to be aware of, reflect on, and direct their thinking. It involves planning how to approach a task, monitoring progress, and evaluating how well it worked. Keep this in mind as we look at some possible responses to our discussion activity. So these are some of the things that strong learners do when they get stuck. Some of these strategies can be observed, but others are internal thought processes. Compare these to your lists. Strong learners pause and think about the task. What is this asking me to do? Have I seen something like this before? So they draw on their prior experiences. They activate what they already know. So they recall examples, models, or similar problems, and they make connections to prior learning. So they're drawing on that prior knowledge that they already have. They choose a strategy. So they try a method that they've been taught. They break a problem down. They use scaffolds that are available to them, such as checklists, worked examples, and diagrams. So they're actively taking control of their own learning and being selective. They monitor as they go. Is this working? Am I getting closer to the answer? And then based on the answers to those internal questions, they can then decide, do I need to change what I'm doing? So they adapt or they try something else. They'll switch strategy if needed, and they'll simplify or reframe the problem. So they don't persist blindly, they make a plan and they move forward. They persevere, they keep going through difficulty, and they stay on task rather than opting out. So they adjust their behaviours and their actions, which is a key part of self-regulation. They seek help strategically, so they'll ask a precise question, or they'll use a peer, teacher, or resource to help them. So they take responsibility for their own learning. And finally, they reflect afterwards. What worked? What will I do next time? They appreciate that everything we do in the classroom is a learning opportunity and that they can improve. over time. All of these behaviours are strategies that involve metacognition and self-regulated learning. They involve an awareness of our own thinking, reflection, and redirection. If we can teach pupils how to have these skills, we are supporting them to be independent, successful learners. Teachers should support pupils to plan, monitor, and evaluate their learning through explicitly teaching, modelling, and scaffolding the use of metacognitive strategies. And we're going to look at a few of those strategies today. We've already heard that metacognition involves being able to plan how to approach a task, monitor your progress, and evaluate how well your approach worked. As teachers, we can't just expect that our pupils will do this naturally. We must explicitly teach it and model it. While all children develop metacognition to some extent, and this develops as they mature, the extent to which this happens differs significantly between learners, and most will not spontaneously develop all the strategies that they need. Initially, pupils require explicit instruction in metacognitive strategies. There is some evidence to suggest that disadvantaged pupils are less likely to use metacognitive strategies and are therefore most likely to benefit from the whole range of approaches to supporting these skills. Teachers should support pupils to plan, to monitor, and to evaluate their learning through explicitly teaching, modelling, and scaffolding the use of metacognitive strategies. Pause here to read the whole slide. The EEF have produced this 7-step model for metacognition and self-regulated learning. Self-regulation here is used to refer to being in control of your own behaviours, your actions, and your emotions. So like the strong learners that we thought about at the beginning who persevered and tried another method when things got tricky rather than opting out. The 7-step model is a scaffolding framework which deliberately shifts responsibility for learning from the teacher to the pupil. So in the diagrams there, the dark blue represents the pupil and the light blue represents the teacher input. So it shows the change in responsibility through the steps. The 7 steps may be used for a single lesson or across a series of lessons. It can be used for explicitly teaching metacognitive strategies for different subject content and at different phases and different ages. I'm going to talk through this model briefly and then we can look at some of the areas more closely. So, this model involves first activating prior knowledge through asking questions about learning strategies that have been used previously. So it might be something that they've learned earlier in the year or from previous years. The next step in this model is explicit strategy instruction, so talking to pupils about how they're going to complete the task and the possible methods that they'll use. Step 3 is modelling of the strategy, so verbalising your thought process of the task, including those teacher think alouds and the worked examples that we looked at in the last session. Step 4 is checking to see what pupils have understood to inform you of your next steps. And then step 5 is guided practice, which gradually then removes support. Step 6, independent practice for application of the learnt skills. And step 7 is structured reflection to evaluate the approach. We're going to look at these steps in more detail, but pause here so you can read through the 7-step model in more detail. Strong learners make links to their prior knowledge of a topic when planning how they will approach a task. We want to guide all learners to do this, so step 1 of the framework is activating prior knowledge. This could involve asking pupils a series of questions about a learning strategy that is relevant to the lesson. Now I know we already all do this within our schools. But if we specifically want to develop the planning aspect of metacognition, these questions will need to be crafted in such a way to encourage pupils to think about the goal of their learning, how they will approach a task, and also why particular strategies are being employed. Watch the lesson clip and note how the teacher promotes metacognitive thinking. Pause here for your school facilitator to play the clip. Next, we're going to look ahead to step 3, modelling of a learned strategy. We've covered the importance of modelling and teacher think-alouds before in our previous sessions. This is a powerful metacognitive strategy, as verbalising your thought process makes your invisible thinking visible. This relates to planning as well as monitoring. So in verbalising their thoughts, the teacher is giving the students an insight into how to think like an expert. The video clip here highlights the difference between modelling and thinking aloud brilliantly. Pause here for the school facilitator to play the clip and discuss it afterwards. We're now going to skip ahead to part 5, guided practice. You may include a talk task to bridge the gap between teacher instruction and independent work. High-quality classroom talk can also be an effective way of supporting pupils to improve and practice metacognitive skills. This can be achieved through providing guiding questions, like the ones on the left-hand side of the slide, or sentence stems to promote metacognitive thinking, as shown on the right-hand side. Through providing these scaffolds, we're supporting pupils to think in this way so that eventually they do this independently. Talk tasks are most effective when the teacher first designs structured, purposeful tasks with clear roles for each child. Secondly, providing sentence stems and key vocabulary to scaffold responses. And finally, modelling of effective partner talk to give regular feedback on the quality of dialogue. The purpose of posing these questions and providing these sentence stems is that you are supporting your pupils to plan, monitor and evaluate, which in turn helps them to be more successful independent learners. The EEF have also provided a tool to promote metacognitive talk, which can be used for modelling, scaffolding, feedback and peer talk during the 3 stages. How can this be used to support the pupils in your class or classes? Pause here to have a read through and then your facilitator will take feedback. You're now going to have the opportunity to look back at the 7-step model. In a pair or as a group, discuss what do you already do habitually and what could you work on including more to support metacognitive skills in the classroom. Adaptations are built into the structure of the 7-step model through the graduated approach of increasing pupil responsibility across 7 steps. The model also lends itself to the strategies we looked at in the previous CPD sessions on explicit instruction and scaffolding. In step 1, activating prior knowledge, you're adapting your questioning so that it is tailored to the needs of your learners, as we discussed in session 1. Within explicit strategy instruction, we are chunking the information, so we are breaking it down into smaller steps. Now, this is often seen in a Send Child's 1 plan, but actually it's a successful learning strategy for everyone. Part 3, modelling and think-alouds verbalise the invisible thought processes of the expert, which is a scaffold for all learners. Part 4, checks for understanding. Now this might be cold calling of key students. It might be setting a talk task and listening in on key groups of children to assess how much they've understood. It might be using whiteboards or actions in response to a multiple choice question. But crucially, this step is about responding to what you're seeing. Do I need to take a step back and provide more models for these students? Do I need to select a group to be part of a guided group, for example? Part 5, guided practice. Now this could be setting a paired task or setting practice questions and gradually removing scaffolds as they're no longer needed using the FAME approach that we looked at in our last session. Part 6, independent practice. In order for all pupils to be independent, this is where we're likely to see those visual, verbal and written scaffolds for certain children, which we looked at in the previous session, and that will support all pupils to access the work. Finally, a structured reflection, guiding pupils to consider which strategies were effective and what they need to keep in mind for next time, whilst providing those sentence stems to focus pupil response. For our next activity, I would like you to use the 7-step model template to design a lesson which promotes metacognition and self-regulated learning. The person facilitating this session will let you know how long you have and when they'd like you to feed back. Pause here. Thank you for your contribution and engagement over the past 3 sessions. I'm going to leave you with these key takeaways. 1. High quality teaching involves explicit instruction, scaffolding, and metacognitive strategies. Scaffolding can be verbal, visual, or written and must be removed when it's no longer needed. Finally, and the cartoon on the right demonstrates this final one, good Zen teaching is good teaching for all.